Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to class. It is Wednesday, April 29th, and today we are talking about green buildings. So before we do that, I just wanted to remind everybody again of the fact that your sustainability technologies or initiatives ideas were due on this past Monday. So today's Wednesday, they were due on Monday of this week. Most of you guys sent those in and I gave you feedback. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. You handed them in and I gave you feedback there where I think there was only one person who didn't hand an idea in yet. So you're doing great on that. The only thing I just want to remind you of as well is to look at the rubric. So as you're making your presentations, look at the rubric to see what to include. That rubric is on Moodle under the Sustainability Technologies Initiatives Project tab. You also have to sign up for a day to present your presentation in class. So I haven't looked today, but yesterday when I looked, only 5 people had signed up. So like sign up for a slot, right? You have to do your presentation. It's worth 100 points. So we don't have a final exam in this class. So once you're done with your presentations, with all of our presentations, both giving yours and being an audience member, then you're done for the semester. That being said, you definitely need to do this presentation because it is worth 100 points of your grade. So go in and sign up. It's under the same section. There's a little sign up block. Okay, and send me an email if you have any questions about that. So today, as I said, we're going to talk about green building, and then there's one video. I've been trying to cut down the additional videos that you have to watch just to take it easy on you all a little bit. But this is a great video. It's about a green brewery. So, okay, just like on Monday, I want you to go back and recall when we talked about resilience versus sustainability. And we remembered that resilience means that it's like the tree that bends in the wind will not break. The system can recover after it's hit by a disturbance. And sometimes it won't be exactly the same, but it can basically fulfill the same functions. That's a resilient system. And like we talked about, and as you guys explored in your CPS, bad systems can be resilient too, right? And I just wanted to say you have some great examples in your CPSs of those, ranging from just like the way the current cities that you live in have been planned and set up to politics, to family dynamics. So you're very good at coming up with resilient systems that were bad, but resilient. So we talked about on Monday also how streets and transportation infrastructure being more sustainable, more walkable, contributes to social and economic sustainability. So I won't go through each one of those because we talked about those on Monday, but we also talked about basically how these affect not only the people who are on the street, but the people who live in the buildings and the whole city as it saves money. And the question for today is, can a greener built environment have some of these same positive effects as improving the streets? Well, yes, because actually the streets are part of the built environment. So the built environment might be a phrase you're not familiar with until you read the chapter for today, but it essentially means, as Daniel Lurch defines it in the book, it's just the background of our lives. So like in that picture that you see down there, it's the sum of all the physical structures, the buildings, the bridges, the power lines, the sidewalks, the bus shelters, everything. So it's essentially things that we really don't take a lot of notice of. We're existing in them on a daily basis, but not that many people think constantly like, what could be different about this? But there's a lot that could be different about the typical built environment that we all live in. So we're going to focus today. So on Monday, we focused on roads as part of the built environment and how they could be made better. Today, we're going to focus on buildings, a huge part of our built environment, right? Because they're all over the landscape and we spend a lot of time inside of them, especially here in the north. So green buildings, the U.S. Green Building Council essentially defines green building as a process. And they say that it's an integrative process that focuses on the relationship between the built environment and the natural environment and tries to make that relationship a little closer. So like you can see in this picture of an office building in Singapore, which Singapore is very wealthy, and they also have a very high density of green buildings. So the green buildings, like the one you see here, they essentially try to have the building not be a system that just takes natural resources and produces waste and emissions, but rather tries to either at least use its own resources recycled, create some of its own energy, and then possibly even ideally create more energy than the building itself uses and sell it to buildings around it. There's also aesthetic pieces to it, right? It's beautiful to look at. It's great for workers to work in an environment like that. So let's look at some actual examples. Where should I put my head? I'll go down here. So I just put up some examples of really beautiful green buildings around the world. So this is the Phipps Center for Sustainable Landscapes in Pittsburgh. And this building, hey honey, I'm giving a lecture. Can you come back later? Sorry. So the Phipps Center for Sustainable Landscapes in Pittsburgh is a net zero carbon emissions building. That means that whole large building is powered by solar panels, wind energy, and actually some geothermal. So it's not, despite being a very large building, and in Pittsburgh, which isn't a warm climate, right? It needs to heat itself for much of the year. It's net zero carbon emissions. So this is possible. It's also net zero water. So some of those beautiful little landscaping gardens you see there are actually part of a complex system to recycle the wastewater. So they harvest rainwater and then they recycle the wastewater. And so when they have wastewater, it actually comes out into these gardens, not like a disgusting, tsunami of toilet water or something. It's piped in, and the sewage would be separate from that, right? But the water that you wash your hands with or any other water used in the building, it's called gray water. It's not sewage, but it's not drinkable. That water gets filtered through these gardens, comes out into this pool where it's then much cleaner, which also collects rainwater, and then is filtered back into the system, only very lightly treated, and then can be used again, not for drinking, but for water, to wash your hands. So this building's totally disconnected from city water. It runs all on the water it collects. So it's pretty amazing. And that last thing I had down there is under my face right now is just that the building has a lot of green spaces, right, for people who work there. There's green spaces on the interior, there's green spaces on the exterior. It's integrated into the landscape. Here's another really cool green building. It's the Taipei Public Library in Japan. And this building also has net zero carbon emissions. Now, what they do, so that it's where this building is a slightly more temperate climate than Pittsburgh. So they use solar panels on the roof to generate electricity, but it doesn't get really very cold there. So they're able to use natural cooling and heating just from opening windows and having internal fans. And water collection, so same as with the center in Pittsburgh, rainwater is harvested. So you can see that the roof is slanted, right? The very top roof. That is in part to collect rainwater. And then that water is used throughout the building, lightly treated and then used in the building. And some of the wastewater is also recycled, as I explained for the Pittsburgh site, through rain gardens the same way. So that's a very beautiful building. So the last one I'm going to mention briefly is also in the US. It's much smaller scale, but it's the New Belgium Brewing Company in Fort Collins, Colorado. So the reason I know about this one is because I did my master's at Colorado State University, and I used to go to this brewery a lot. It's a great place. You can see it's right on the river. You can ride your bike there. You can have a beer while you're looking out at the kayakers. It's a really nice place. And this building has the highest LEED certification, the gold certification, because when they built this brewery, they thought ahead and realized that building a green building was going to save them money in the long term, which it has. And so they built this beautiful building. I won't tell you everything about it. You can watch that in the additional video, which is beer and green building, to see all the innovations that they have there. So you might be thinking in your mind, like, okay, cool. Well, if you're not the Pittsburgh Center for Sustainable Design or the public library in a big city or someone who has enough money to build a brewery, you can't have a green building. Is that true? Well, right now, so say you wanted to build a house and you wanted to make your house green building. Yeah, you kind of do have to have a little more than the average amount of money now. But it's not because this inherently costs more money to do. It does not. It's an economy of scale. What that means is that if everybody demands a certain material to build their house, then producers produce a lot of that material, and it's cheaper to produce a lot of something at the same time. But if not many people request a certain material, it's not as common, and it's produced in small batches, which cost producers more. So, or say you go to the store and you ask for this material, maybe they have to special order it, they charge you a little bit more. So my point is, because we haven't traditionally, and I just mean for like the past 100 years, we haven't traditionally built with sustainable materials, they're not as easy to find and they're not as cheap as the materials that we have been using for the past 100 years. Now, before the past maybe 200 years, of course, buildings were green buildings. They didn't have all of the technologies that we have now to power our buildings with fossil fuels and heat them up no matter how inefficient they are, and not rely on any exterior cooling or heating because we'll just use fossil fuels to heat them up. So we've only been building houses and other buildings so unsustainably for a short amount of time. We can switch it back. So if building regulations, like if you've ever built a house, probably not, but if your family maybe has, or if you've even done a little addition like stairs on your house, you have to get a building permit, and your building has to be up to code. So that code now, it's for safety. It doesn't include anything about being green. But if the code were changed to require some of these green measures, then builders would comply with them, and then the suppliers would start to supply those materials more. And then normal people, average income people, could afford to build this way. So let's look at this little image in there for a minute to see, like, what are some of these things? Do you have to be like building a house from scratch on a lot that you have enough money to build it yourself? No. If you remember the word retrofit, you know retro means like throwback to the old days, and fit means fit in this case. So retrofitting is taking something you currently have and the old piece and changing it to make it fit modern standards. So for example, up here it's saying, what can make your house more green? A thermal barrier, installing adequate insulation on all sides of the home, improves occupant comfort and reduces the heating and cooling load. Okay, so adding insulation on your house, right? Air barrier, sealing cracks and penetrations prevents unwanted air movement. So these aren't like expensive or wildly glamorous modifications to make to a home. Some of these other ones are ones we've seen before too, installing LED light bulbs instead of fluorescent bulbs. Sealing your ducts, you can't probably do that by yourself. Buying efficient windows. So I own my house, or the bank owns it, but I'm paying it off. And my house, before I bought it, the owners invested in what's called an Energy Star upgrade, and they put all new windows in the house. It's an old house. But now I get a check every year because New York State will pay you to have a more efficient home. So because you're saving energy. So I get a check that's some percentage of my energy bill for having an Energy Star certified home. So these things do pay off. I guess we'll go in this order. So I wanted to highlight some of your own ideas from your CPSs. So I asked you to think about what could make your built environment greener and more sustainable. And here are some ideas, not every single idea, but some of the ideas you came up with. So some people said, we're looking more at like what's missing now. In Potsdam, there's not a lot of green energy. Walmart is on top of a wetland. That's very intuitive of you to notice. Walmart is indeed built on top of a wetland. The town is not economically sustainable because it's economically dependent on colleges. Other people had more of suggestions that could be done either where they live or in Potsdam, like increasing public transportation options and making them more accessible. When it's time to update appliances, buy more efficient ones. So maybe you don't have the money to replace all your appliances, but in the 4 years I've lived in my house, all of my appliances have broken. So when I go to buy a new one, I look for the Energy Star rated ones. Is it a little bit more right then? Yes. Does it save me that same amount of money and more in the long term? Yes. So I'm not saying dump all your appliances, just get new ones when make sure that they're energy efficient when your old ones go out. Super easy things like install LED bulbs in your house, use more natural light during the day. Some people mentioned things they were already doing, like some people already have several things like motion sensing lights, they recycle, they compost, have a home garden, natural cooling instead of an air conditioner. That was a mean, actually, so I just remember that one. I was impressed, so good job on your sustainable house. Other folks said already have solar panels, or they've used recyclable materials to build things in the yard, like a chicken coop. And then suggestions included this other one down here. I forgot, better access to protected areas. So you don't have to move your house, but if there's better connections between protected areas and houses, then that gives you more access and makes the community in general more sustainable, right? Okay, so those are great ideas. I enjoyed reading them as always. What are the benefits of doing all of this? Why should we do it? Is it just to be a good environmental steward? Of course, in part, but there's also significant social and economic benefits. So some social benefits include contribute to local energy independence. So if your buildings are generating their own energy, then you don't need to worry about like overseas problems with oil or problems with a gas pipeline coming down from Canada if you're generating your own energy in your buildings through solar, wind, geothermal. Health benefits for workers and visitors. I mean, who didn't want to just walk inside one of those buildings I was showing you? Imagine if you worked there every day at your desk. They're pretty nice places to work. And as we learned in the section where we're talking about making schools greener, there's a lot of health benefits for people who work in those environments. They're a great educational model. So when you have a building like that in your community, people are impressed by it, and then the ideas spreads and motivates other people. And they add beauty to cityscapes, right? They're beautiful buildings. Economic benefits, these are significant as well. You save a lot of money with these buildings. You save money on your water bill. Like imagine that building in Pittsburgh. They don't have a water bill, right? They're not on city water. They treat and recycle all their own water. Energy bills, they don't have an energy bill. They generate all their own energy. Trash bills, they don't have a trash bill. I forgot to put that on there actually, but they recycle, they have zero landfill. They recycle or compost all of their waste. So they don't have any of those bills. Employee productivity is proved. That's been shown through numerous studies comparing productivity with people in green buildings and standard buildings. And they're also healthier. So you have fewer sick days, fewer drains on your company health insurance policy. So there's lower employee health costs. So those are all benefits. Environmental, these are the ones that are probably the easiest to come up with, right? You're using fewer fossil fuels, you're lowering water demands, reducing the waste stream. You're increasing the amount of vegetation in your city or town. So there's carbon capture and it increases the local ecosystem. Like those gardens outside and those centers are going to be visited by, they're going to provide like urban habitat for those species, for species who rely on them. And if we didn't talk about this with those buildings, but if you're using what a lot of green buildings use, which is recycling building materials, then you're reducing the impact on building material sources like forests or mines. So these are all excellent benefits, right? The only con of green buildings is that the initial building cost is higher. So this is the way that a lot of sustainability technologies are working now. And you may be seeing this as you're creating your sustainability technology presentations. Whatever is the most common is generally the cheapest. So when something is uncommon or new, it tends to be more expensive because it's not being produced on a mass scale. So if we can, the green buildings don't have to be way more expensive initially. They don't have to be. They can be the same price as building a non-green building of the same square footage. But because most buildings are not built green, we go back to the same issue I was describing of supply and demand, right? So I just want you to understand they're not inherently more expensive from something about them. It's just that the materials aren't as common. Okay, so just linking back to way in the beginning of class, we talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. So green buildings actually, and this includes green streets, green infrastructure, address 6 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So they increase good health and well-being, they increase affordable and clean energy locally, they definitely improve industry, innovation, and infrastructure, contribute to sustainable cities and communities. They certainly model more responsible consumption and waste production than non-green buildings, right? They're taking action on climate change, and they are part of partnerships for the goals. I mean, that last one, any sustainability measure could be part of that last one. But they contribute to a wide range of SDGs. Okay, so last couple of slides here. How do you know if a building is a green building? There's a ton of certification systems out there that you can get to advise you on constructing your building or how to retrofit an existing building and how to get these certifications. But why do you want the certification? Like, increases your property value, right? It's like it's a branding thing. So you can say like, our university has X number of LEED certified, gold certified green buildings. Or your house, when you go to put it on the market, you say, my house is an Energy Star house. And the people know that the buyers, prospective buyers, know that they're going to save money on their energy, water, and waste bills at your house. So these are just some of the many certification systems that are out there in the US and abroad. But the biggest and most popular one is LEED. And that stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And I put this little spectrum up here. It's just like running in a race where you get like the gold medal, the silver medal, or the bronze medal. The LEED ratings, it's a whole list, giant list of modifications you can make to your building. And each modification is worth a certain number of points. So like in your CPS, when I said, here's a list of things that LEED looks for, what do you see that could fit into that? That's what a LEED certifier would do when they come to your building. Which of these things are here, which are not? How many points do they get? And so, again, this doesn't have to be a brand new building. You can take an old building, like my house, and retrofit it by putting new, highly effective windows in, right, that insulate it better. So, what LEED certified buildings do we have in Potsdam? You might not be surprised to hear that the only LEED certified buildings in Potsdam are on the Clarkson campus. There's 2, the Clarkson Student Center, if you guys have ever been over there, and it's like also the addition to the Science Center. But I just put up a picture of the Student Center. So there's a picture of it from the inside, and there it's LEED Silver certified, so 50 to 59 points. And this little graphic, like, you can go to the LEED website and look up any building and see how it got its certification. What does it have? So you can see on this LEED dashboard that the Clarkson Student Center is not doing super well with energy. It only has 3 of all those possible points. I guess that must mean it's not getting energy from solar panels or what have you. Materials and resources, seems like they were sustainably sourced to some degree. Indoor environmental quality, they scored really high on. And you can see that's a beautiful place to be in. So they scored high. Sustainable sites, so where it was built was not a wetland. And I assume they got those points because usually a site's more sustainable if it was a place that was already developed and already hooked up to electricity and water. You didn't have to disturb ecosystems more by doing those things. Water efficiency, I guess it's extremely water efficient. And innovation and design, 2 out of 5. So obviously, without looking at their complete list, we don't know exactly how they got these points. You have to walk around that building with a list and say, like, do they have those water faucets that go on and off automatically? Do they have the automatic on and off lights? How thick are those windows? Are they double pane so that they're insulated, et cetera, et cetera. So if in the future you do find yourself in a position where you can build or retrofit your own house, think about the certification system, because not only is it going to save you money while you live in the house to do some of these things, but it also make it more appealing to a potential buyer. Okay, so that's all for today. I wanted to say there's no more CPSs, you're done. Congratulations on a great job with those. On Monday, it's the first day of your presentations. So I've mentioned this before, but you do have to come to all the presentation days, even if you're not giving your presentation, because you're learning about other sustainable technologies from your peers. Hopefully it will be really entertaining, maybe more entertaining than watching me talk. So the way we're going to do that is I'll send a Zoom link for each presentation day. I'll post it on Moodle. You'll just go on Moodle and click on that link and you'll be in the Zoom room, and the people who are presenting will share their screen to show their poster. So I imagine there's going to be like a couple snafus the first day, but hopefully we'll get it running smoothly. And that's all. So again, sign up for a presentation day, okay? All right, thank you all, and I'm looking forward to seeing your presentations on Monday. Okay, have a good weekend.